I loved it. I freaking loved it. To say I was excited for the third and final film of James Gunn's trilogy was an understatement. And as we arrived closer, I tried so hard to temper my expectations. Hype is a dangerous game that 9 times out of 10 will burn you. Really, everything was against this movie. The MCU reaching new quality lows, the beyond oversaturated superhero genre, decisions made about Gunn's characters outside of his control, Gunn's firing and rehiring, the fact that ending a trilogy is just plainly really hard. Even Star Wars struggled to perfect the landing, but beyond that, Godfather Part 3, Dark Knight Rises, Back to the Future 3, Spider-Man 3, all trilogies that really started losing steam in their final outing. Furthermore, the Guardians Holiday Special, while fun, was incredibly underwritten and for me, a disappointment.
I want this funny man.
Don't you?
I left my little funny man back in the house.
What?
A little funny man.
Yet, Jimmy Gunn bloody well pulled it off. Not only do we get, by far, the greatest MCU trilogy, but a superhero trilogy that will undoubtedly stand the test of time. I loved this film, just like pretty much everyone else. I truly appreciate how cohesive this trilogy is, and it does it without any of the individual outings feeling like a rehash, each having their own spice and unique flavour. As we move through the trilogy, they encapsulate a different decade of music and the feelings that come with getting older. Until here we are in the 90s, listening to Radiohead's Creep, but oh my god, it's the acoustic version. Get out of here, Jimmy, you little mastermind. They should put you in charge of a studio something. Appropriately, I'm an adult now. If you think I'm watching Secret Invasion, get the frick out of here. My tastes have changed and refined. I view art, and especially film, through a more critical lens. It's why I love the complexity of Volume 2, and why I'm about to wax poetic about Volume 3. This is an incredible finale. I love these characters. Let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, one last time, with feeling. To refine and present what Guardians Volume 3 is about in a concise manner is no easy task. However, I present that it comes down to 2 distinct themes that feed into each other like fleshy, trauma-styled goop rings? Regardless, the first theme is... We see this explicitly through Volume 3's incredible pivot towards Rocket Raccoon as this film's main protagonist. The focus on Rocket's origins and his maniacal creator, which led to why Rocket is a broken raccoon.
What's a raccoon? Don't call me a raccoon! I'm not a raccoon either.
I am a
Raccoon, whatever. I'm not a damn raccoon. I'm not a raccoon.
Rocket has justifiably struggled to confront his past, avoiding it his entire life, allowing it to turn him bitter, to control him.
Well, I didn't ask to get made! I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over it!
As Rocket learns through reflection and his friends desperately trying to save his life, he is so much more than what his creator did to him. It's time to stop running.
I'm done running.
Furthermore, we see this reflected in the other Guardians, like Peter's arc. He's been avoiding Earth his entire life. It's where his mum died and he left his grandpa behind. Quill starts the film mopey. He loves Gamora, who has essentially died. Pete thinks that this romantic bond will be the substance that fulfills him. However, as Mantis gets Drax to aptly put, perhaps what Quill needs to do is fully resolve his trauma and the family he left behind.
and you've spent your entire life leaping from woman to woman as if they are lily pads upon this great pond. Perhaps what you need to do, Quill, is learn to swim.
We see this in Nebula, and by extension, New Gamora. Thanos' abuse towards them, the impact it had, and the growth Nebula has made is a distinct part of Volume 2, continued here. Mantis was entirely created by a god for menial tasks. She finds solace with the Guardians, but lacks individuality that her creator took from her. The Guardians' theme song only re-emerges subtly at the climax of the film as Rocket finally regains some agency against his creator. The High Revolutionary, who is attempting to make a perfect civilization, one that is cut and stitched together by what he deems correct. As Rocket goes on to point out, it's not about perfection, the High Revolutionary just hates the way things are. This notion of trauma and not being defined by our past is one close to Gunn's heart. It radiates throughout the trilogy. However, before we get to that, I need to talk about things I love about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 that I couldn't meaningfully fit into the script in about a minute. The soundtrack. This transition right here with Rocket. Will Poulter as Adam Warlock is fantastic with some incredible line delivery. All of Groot's unique powers that never get reused. The practical sets and costumes are just outstanding. 2001: A Space Odyssey homages. Gamora going Pulp Fiction. The soundtrack. There's some horrific moments that are so tastefully executed. Drax's metaphors, Drax on a couch, Drax convincing Mantis to get on the bike, Drax doing a monkey charade, which may be my favourite moment of the entire film, no joke. The soundtrack. The excellent CGI that required careful planning and storyboarding to look as good as it does. This face-off. The brilliant one-take hallway action sequence that may just be the peak of MCU action. The classic whole team beats up the baddie at the end. And finally, the soundtrack! Volume 3 is the perfect continuation of this major theme present throughout the previous two films that focused more on Quill's heritage. Volume 1, at its core, was about Peter and his mother, specifically her love and the far-reaching damage of his parental figure dying when he was just a child. The shame Pete feels for his irrational actions in Meredith's last moments. This defines Peter for the rest of his life, and while his creator, his mum, was not malicious like Rocket's, there is obviously still trauma. And beyond that, Pete has this idealized memory of his mother that in many ways defines him, through her tastes in 70s music and pop culture. This is the first scene of the entire trilogy. It tells us everything that Gunn wants to explore through these movies. In the events of the first film, Peter is able to find hope in the people around him and reclaims some purpose in saving the universe. Volume 2 continues this theme through Peter's explicitly malicious and charming biological father, Ego. Here Pete allows his newfound heritage to further define his behaviour. Quill was already immature due to his lack of suitable parental figures, and Ego knows just how to manipulate Quill into giving in to his own selfish wants and to dismiss his friends. However, while our past and creators need not define us indefinitely, they certainly can guide us. Enter Yondu, Quill's adoptive father, who gets a chance to redeem himself. And Quill is finally able to accept that what he's longed for his entire life was there all along. This is where we start to view our next major theme of the trilogy: legacy. Ronan wants a legacy of blood and destruction. Ego wants eternal legacy. The High Evolutionary wants a legacy of clinical perfection. Ultimately, though, Yondu's legacy in Peter, who forms the Guardians, will be everlasting. As Lila says, there's the hands that made us,
And then there are the hands that guide the hands.
This line here is incredibly open to interpretation, as elements of all great art are. Lila could be referring to God, or maybe fate, or perhaps purpose.
You still have a purpose here.
A purpose for what?
What's my purpose, homie?
I weave this line into the second major theme of the trilogy: legacy. Our past, the hands that made us, our mothers, fathers, gods, and creators, do not need to define who we are. Our legacy, however, will. For Rocket, the hands that guide us are Teefs, Floor, and Lila, and furthermore, Pete and all of the Guardians who chose to see the best in him and love him unconditionally. Rocket, having now overcome his trauma, is able to lead the new Guardians and becomes the hands that guide. New Gamora is put on the correct path due to people who have seen what she can become and the newfound family she fits in with. Drax may once have been motivated by the bloodshed of his family and the thirst for destruction, but what guides him now is the memory of the absolute innocence of his wife and daughters. New Groot came from the sacrifice of old Groot, however, the Guardians have raised him. Nebula found love in her sister and purpose in doing better than Thanos. The climax of the film has distinct biblical imagery. The creation of Adam Shot, involving Adam, Warlock, and Star-Lord. Warlock even gets his own lamb throughout. The Noah's Ark imagery of life escaping a cold, logical, cube-like ship into the celestial brain that represents messy consciousness. The best society would never be a clinical, perfect civilization, or one where half the population is wiped out, but one that saves and upholds all that are innocent. Not just the people, but the animals. This is the Guardians' legacy, their children. Nothing encapsulates all these ideas better than Gunn's choice for the final song of the trilogy. Allow me to read the lyrics. Run fast for your mother, run fast for your father, run for your children, for your sisters and brothers, leave all your love and your longing behind. You can't carry it with you if you want to survive. In 2023, my best friend and I drove nearly 2 hours to the biggest cinema in the area. With trepidation, I sat in the cinema with my Guardians branded drink and popcorn, not ready for a film series that had defined aspects of my childhood to end. I was anxious I wouldn't love it. I was scared the characters I cared for would die. I was sad that this was the end. Yet, as the movie began, I knew I was in safe hands. I couldn't have dreamed for a better ending. From the beautiful opening sequence with Rocket to the biblical imagery of pure, innocent life being plucked away. And you know what? There will always be a place for cynicism in film media. I spent 10 weeks praising Succession, which could only end tragically for its characters. There will always be a place for meaningful sacrifice, for messy, unsatisfying reality, for depressing endings. For God's sake, the Bible ends in fiery revelation as humanity faces harsh judgment. But sometimes, very rarely, an ending comes that is just sincere to its core. This is elevated science fiction about superheroes. Is it too much to ask for genuine heart? For zero bite in cynicism? For the restraint to not undercut this final moment? We can be sad that it's over, but joyful for the journey, and our characters who have found a spark in themselves and are ready to move on from each other. Who can dance with delight, grateful to the gods to be alive. This is the end, and that's okay. A tearful goodbye to friends, and an embrace of our newfound purpose. To reconnect with old family members, to raise a new generation, to explore the far reaches of the galaxy, to lead the protectors of the cosmos. I am frightened of my own future, my indecision, my lack of purpose. Sure, Guardians is fiction, but it is heartening to recognize that a team of people were able to make a movie that could instill hope, that perhaps with enough time and adequate self-reflection, that I could find purpose in the right place, in the people around me. And yes, it'll mean letting go of the people, places, and pursuits that I love. But right there, that's the magic of cinema. The ability to make us feel beyond the images on our screen, to make our hearts flutter with bliss. James Gunn and his team do it like nobody else.
But the thing that was so amazing to me was in that moment of lowness, when I couldn't help anyone, is when people came to me and showed me the greatest love. All of these people, just, it was stunning to me. And for the first time in my, I felt like for the first time in my life, I felt loved. And so that thing that I had been searching for my entire life, to feel loved from something outside of me, to make myself feel okay, I could not experience it until I let go of my desperation to receive it. And that was when I felt truly okay.
Don't forget to click below to subscribe.
More stuff and this weird thing gets it!
Don't be rash.